Good morning, Jim.
Morning, Jay.
All right, so last night, Pablo Lopez didn't have his best outing. The Twins lose 7-3 against the Cubs. Your thoughts?
Yeah, terrible game. Just Pablo was not sharp at a time of the year. They really needed him to be sharp. They didn't do anything against the left-hander that they probably should have done something against. Really, other than Royce Lewis hitting another home run, not much to speak of. Austin Martin missed the ball in center field that Buxton would have caught in his back pocket. Just a bad game, frankly.
So as far as, Pablo Lopez trying to get it figured out, they certainly need that. I mean, they need him to be the number one, right?
That's the thing. And that's what I've been saying for the last month is, all the consternation over the trade deadline, all this other stuff. Their fate is going to be determined by their best players. Pablo Lopez, Byron Buxton, Royce Lewis, Carlos Correa, Yohan Duran, key relievers, Wallner. I mean, those are the guys who are going to determine whether they win or not. And both, their performance and their health are going to be the key. Pablo's healthy. He is a highly paid ace. They need him to pitch like an ace. He didn't last night. There's still time in this season for him to make an impact, but that was disappointing last night.
Jim, what are your thoughts on, as far as getting Correa back? Has anyone said anything about when he might come back?
Not publicly. What's interesting is that, he came out in an interview, I guess, last week saying a lot of enthusiastic, positive, optimistic things. Of course, the Twins back that up. Usually that's the way pro sports teams do it, is put a positive spin on things, hope for the best, keep the player encouraged. What I'm hearing behind the scenes is he might not be back until middle of next week, so he might miss the Cleveland series. Now, we're talking about an injury. He could show up tomorrow and feel great, and that would change things. But the last time, when I talked to people over the weekend, they were saying, realistically, he might have to go out for some rehab games, so he might not be back in the major leagues for a bit now.
Brooks Lee's cooled off a little bit since his hot start when he came up. Teams just adjusting to him.
Yeah, and the other thing is, he came up and he looked so composed and so balanced at the plate, and he's a switch hitter, and he's a smart hitter and all those things. But he's going to have two problems breaking through and being an impact major league hitter over the long term. Number one, he's swinging outside the zone too much. He's not, not many hitters in the history of the game have been able to swing outside the zone and thrive. Kirby Puckett was the rarity. Vladimir Guerrero was a rarity. He's not one of those guys. He's going to have to become much more disciplined, swing at pitches in the zone and swing at the right pitches if he's going to succeed. The other thing is he does not generate the kind of bat speed or exit velocity that impact hitters do. The ball doesn't come off his bat the way it does off Royce Lewis's or Byron Buxton's. Even last night, he had a double to right center. Good at bat, good swing, but the ball kind of just floats out there. He does not hit the rockets that stars hit. So as encouraging as it was to see him, show that composure when he first came up, he has a lot to work on.
Jim, what are your thoughts on Austin Martin? How good can he be?
I think unless he becomes a much better hitter, I think he's a utility player. And as we see with Willie Castro, a good utility player can really make a nice career, but he's not as good as Willie Castro. He right now projects to be a moves guy, somebody who can pinch run, maybe pinch hit, play around the field, run the bases well. But he just doesn't do anything that right now that indicates he's going to be an impact player or an everyday player.
Jim, at the Olympics yesterday, a good come-from-behind win. Hawker ends up winning the 1,500. That was a fun race. There's some track and field events that aren't real inspiring or interesting, but the United States finishing first and third in that particular event was fun to watch.
Only the fourth American to win a gold medal in that event, which tells you how good the world is at it. I thought that was one of the best races I've ever seen in my life. To see him be not only behind the whole race, but then trapped on the last lap, where he was boxed in. He tried to make a move to the inside. He couldn't get inside. Then he had to deke to the middle to open up an inside lane and then out sprint two guys who thought they had the gold and the silver wrapped up. That was one of the most interesting, inspiring races I've ever seen.
Because he was being blocked, right? I mean, that's at least that was the thinking, because he was trying to go on the inside, and he ended up succeeding on the inside.
Yeah, he really, I mean, he basically made some running back or wide receiver moves to get himself open. And to do that in the last lap when you know he's exhausted, when you know he's going to need every bit of energy he has for this sprint. That was just so impressive.
Jim, the United States men's basketball team beat Brazil handily, so they move on. They get Serbia. Is this going to be a tough matchup for them?
Well, the challenge is they've played Serbia a couple times recently, and they've beaten them pretty handily. We know they're the better team. We know they should win. But, they've got good players, and now they've seen what the United States does, and it's just hard to just blow out the same team over and over when that team has talent. So, listen, the United States absolutely should win, but, even Steve Kerr was saying yesterday, hey, you can't, and coaches always say this, but I actually believe what he's saying here is that, that team they're smart enough to have learned some things from the last couple of games. So the United States should win, but, I have a sneaking suspicion it won't be the blowout that it was against, like, Brazil.
Jim, what do you think about France and Germany? That's the other semifinal. Those are two pretty good teams, especially France's with the size they have.
Yeah, they're both good teams. I've been saying that I think the biggest challenge in the bracket for the United States would be France. Gobert playing FIBA rules where he doesn't have to leave the paint. Wembanyama can and he's a guy who can stay in the paint and cause problems, or he can actually get to and Rudy's good at getting the perimeter too. But to have two 7-footers who move well, who aren't required to leave the paint, that will require the United States to shoot the ball well to win that game. Now, once again, the United States should win that game, but it's a different challenge.
So, Jim, is this pretty much the last run of LeBron, Steph, and Durant being the key players? And do you think Edwards will be one of the key players in 4 years?
Who knows? What if LeBron wants to play 4 years from now? I mean, he could be the Diana Taurasi of the men's team. Everybody expects him to retire, but God, the guy's still playing great, and he loves doing it. So yeah, 4 years seems like a long time. You would expect him to be retired by then, but who knows? Durant, I don't know. He really takes a lot of pride in playing for the team. He's the all-time leading scorer now. He's not as old as LeBron. I could see him coming back and playing a role. Steph, yeah, I get the sense that this is kind of Steph's Olympic experience, but he seems to really be enjoying it. So, but yeah, by 4 years from now, Anthony Edwards might be, I just did a whole podcast with John Krasinski on this about Ant and his status in the game and where he's, how much he's improved his status in the game over the last year or two. And, it's hard to be a top 5 NBA player. There's never been a greater depth of talent in the NBA than there is now. But he's getting to the point where he's going to be in the conversation, and 4 years from now, he might be there.
Jim, the Vikings are getting set to play their first preseason game against the Raiders on Saturday. Do we have a clear idea of who's playing, who's not playing? I think Jefferson with the hamstring probably isn't going to play. I think Aaron Jones isn't going to play. I think the quarterback's going to play. What's going to be interesting to see just how they, however they plan on using them. What's going to be interesting is seeing how they actually use them. And at what point do they feel like Darnold has gotten enough? At what point do they want to put in McCarthy? I think that's the most intriguing thing. So is Addison going to play? Can he play?
Yeah. I mean, he hasn't been disciplined yet. So, I do think he will be playing.
Do you know if the Vikings are satisfied with their receiver depth behind Jefferson and Addison?
I would say they're not thrilled, but they also think that there's a chance that Naylor can fill that number 3 role. Frankly, they didn't get, they really thought that Osborne was going to be good for them last year, and he wasn't. They feel like, of course you want to have the maximum production at every position, but you can't afford to have stars at every position. So I think they feel like with Naylor being a young, talented guy, with Brandon Powell being a really smart veteran who can work underneath and run after the catch, that they can get by at the third receiver position. What they really can't afford is an injury to the top 2 guys, or they can't really afford Addison getting a 3-game suspension, which is a possibility.
Will the Vikings be looking for receivers? Is this going to be an interesting battle for that third, fourth receiver spot?
I really think Naylor has the third position. I really think Naylor's the number 3 and Powell's the number 4. So the question is, does somebody become available to them, either by a cheap trade or on waivers, who they think is better than Naylor and who they think can be incorporated fairly quickly? It's possible. My guess is they're going to give Naylor a good look this year.
What do you think about the tight end position, especially since Hawkinson's not going to be able to play the first part of the year?
I mean, they have good players. They have good blockers. But, Hawkinson's their pass-catching tight end. So I think if Hawkinson's out early, and by the way, Hawkinson's running really well at camp. So he might be ahead of schedule. I don't know what that means for the opener, but I don't think he's going to be out as long. If he keeps going the way he's going, I don't think he's going to be out a long time. I really could see this team trying to emphasize the running game early in the season. They have very good blocking tight ends. They have a big, strong offensive line. They have excellent tackles. They're going to want to establish that they can run the ball. They're probably not going to want to ask Sam Darnold if he's the start, or either Sam Darnold or J.D. McCarthy. They're probably not going to want those guys to have to throw for 400 yards to win. So, yes, they will miss Hawkinson. Yes, they'll miss him a lot in the passing game. But they do have good blocking tight ends, and they might try to take advantage of that.
So what's this? So he's on the PUP list now. Do they have to make a decision on if he stays in the PUP list, and then what does that mean for him?
Basically, you have to choose either put somebody on, I don't have my jargon down right now, but you either have to put him on the injured list and can't play for 6 weeks, or you have to carry him on your roster and hope that he can get back fairly soon. They're not going to, unless something drastically bad happens, they're not going to put him on the injured list.
Okay, so then he would be back within, less than 6 weeks is the expectation.
Well, what I'm saying is he's running so well right now, he might be back 2 or 3 weeks into the season.
Wow, that'd be amazing. Certainly that would help him. All right, what do you got in your podcast?
Today, the John Krasinski Show, where we talk a lot about Anthony Edwards, will be out. We'll also have the Viking Update Show out, talking about a lot of these Vikings issues. And we also have the Don Mitchell Show coming out, and everything will be at talknorth.com or on your favorite podcast app. All
right, Jim, thank you. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Thanks, Jay.
It's Jim Souhan, Star Tribune sports columnist, joining us every weekday morning at this time. Follow him on Twitter at SouhanStrib. Check out his latest column in the Star Tribune or his podcast at talknorth.com. Jim once again today brought to you by the Green Mill in downtown St. Cloud. Next on WJON, World and National News from ABC, followed by local news.